Over the years, there have been many symbiotes, and Carnage has seemingly died. But symbiotes never truly die, do they? So that means that Carnage needs a new body and needs to reawaken his entire army of Life Foundation symbiotes and reawaken all the other symbiotes related to the Codex. The symbiotes never truly die, and of course that means that the Carnage symbiote, even without Cletus Cassidy, is still around. But now it's time for him to try to build up an army with a lot of the other symbiotes, and I'll explain that in a second. But right now you have found yourself at the Comicstorian channel, where I take comic book storylines and I break them down into a synopsis that I narratively read to you. We make changes to the overall storyline and the comic panels so that you have a reason to go buy the current book and support the industry by going to your local comic book store or going to your local digital retailer. And we basically give you a condensed version of an audio drama of your favorite comic storylines here. And I hope you enjoy this type of content, and if you do, consider pressing that like button after the video. But anyway, at the end of King in Black, Carnage was seemingly dead, and Flash Thompson had seemingly been brought back from the dead. So now Carnage is off to try to rebuild an army by taking control of all of the symbiotes that he created over the years that have kind of broken away from him. So he's trying to get all of them back, and at the same time, Flash Thompson is trying to stop him. This is the Extreme Carnage miniseries that was created recently, and it's 8 issues long, and let's get into it. As the people gather in the park, Senator Peter Crane tells everyone that the planet is their place. Theirs. They like to think of themselves as the top of the food chain, don't they? Kings of the hill. After all, if the highest rung of the evolutionary ladder isn't occupied by them, who else would it be? They live in a brave new world now, friends, and they've been disillusioned about their place in it. Their world is filled with predators, monsters. They shouldn't have been surprised. They should have known for years that they're not alone. First, the mutants came for them. Now, the aliens. Even on their good days, superhuman threats run free right under your noses. You try not to think about it. You try to go on about your days. You try to go on about your lives. You tell yourselves that it won't be me. I'm not bothering anyone. The predators won't come for me. Will they? It won't be me who dies when the next bridge falls. It won't be my children when the next school explodes. It won't be my town when the next alien tyrant attacks. Except that when the symbiotes came, they came for us all. Never again, my friends. Never again. This park was recently marred by tragedy, an alien attack in which 154 human beings lost their lives. The president has announced the construction of a memorial here, a chunk of stone that he will dedicate 2 weeks from today. Is that enough? For those of you who have lost people to the invasion, we need action! We need leaders who will tell the Tony Starks, the Charles Xaviers, and anyone else who harbors aliens no more. That is why today I am announcing my partnership with the newly reorganized and refocused Friends of Humanity, with whom I am introducing the Bright Right Act, which will ensure the human race is not forced to share this planet. I have called on the president to join us in this fight. So far, the White House has not accepted. Which is why next month in Washington, D.C., as the president's supporters gather around another meaningless piece of stone, the Friends of Humanity will be protesting with a gathering of its own. Join us in 2 weeks as we call on Washington to denounce this violence, to come together to drive out the alien threat for humanity. But while Peter is giving his speech over at the airport, Dr. Miller steps off the plane and sees a sign for him asking if they'd sent a car for him. They're too kind. The young man picking him up says, "Wow, you're a lot younger than I expected." And Miller tells him it's just clean living. Ready to go? As the two walk to the car, Miller says, "Man, I am starving. Can't remember the last time I was this hungry." And the young man asks, "Didn't they feed you on the plane?" Miller begins to flip through the radio stations, telling him that some of the flight attendants' brains got in his mouth, so he wouldn't call that a meal. Just then, the young man's phone pings with a message, and as he stares at it, Miller asks, "What's wrong? You get some bad news?" "Who's the text from?" The young man says, "It's, Dr. Miller." Miller's voice begins to change into a gruff, twisted tone. "Well, that is some bad news!" As Carnage begins to come out, he stares at the young man, turning the volume of the radio up. And as the blood splatters along the inside of the car, the young man tries to get out, but Carnage pulls him back in, blood beginning to pour out of the bottom of the door. Later that night, Flash Thompson begins to unload a truck of food, asking the other guy, Hank, if he needs a hand. Hank says that he isn't the one with the prosthetic legs. He should be the one asking. Flash laughs. Okay. Take it easy, old man. Nobody's going to take it from you. How's Tessa? Hank says that she's good. Glad to have him around again. She never liked him going overseas. He likes working for the shelter, and he knows a lot of vets really need this stuff, but he just doesn't want to be moving boxes his whole life, you know? Been thinking about getting into security work. Flash asks him, really? And Hank goes on, yeah, Army wasn't for me, but that intensity, man. Every day I just had to turn the volume up so high sometimes. Sometimes it's hard to feel like anything matters after that. Heck, Lawlin is on security detail right now for some pop star. He's out there using the stuff that we learned, seeing the world, living the good life, Flash. You'd like it. And not just the cause of the travel and fancy stuff. Lawlin's been doing something that matters, something that takes focus, a reason to keep his guard up. He's keeping people safe. Flash tells him, yeah, I get that. I just don't talk to a lot of people. But if I hear something, I'll... But before he could finish his sentence, he hears thumping in his mind, and when he blinks, he finds himself in the passenger seat of a bloody car. He looks around asking, wait, where am I? And when he looks over, he asks, who the hell are they? Carnage, still taking Dr. Miller's form, tells him, it's family! Flash realizes what's going on. No, you're not Cletus. Cletus is dead. And Carnage bursts out laughing. That's your reasoning? There's only dead men in this car, Eugene Thompson. Some a bit more than others, mind you. Flash asks, what did he do? And Carnage tells him, spare me the waterworks. We're family. Don't pretend to be all civilized on me. You know the things that have happened. You can smell the blood. You know what it's like, right? To open up a man's neck, slop around, and what comes out? You wanted to crack a bad guy's ribs open. You wanted to sink your arms in the guts, like a Christmas turkey. As Carnage rips out of Dr. Miller's body, he yells, follow that pull. Your family is waiting for you. And we're gonna change the world together! Flash begins to change into his anti-venom suit, telling him, my name is Flash, and if I see you again, it'll be the last thing. But that's when he hears someone calling for him, and when he blinks, he finds himself about ready to kill Hank. Flash pulls himself back, asking, Hank, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean for you to find out like this. He begins to run away, but there's another thump as Iron Man stands in his way. Tony opens up the helmet, telling him, you're a hard man to track down when you're not anti-venoming people. Flash asks what is he doing here, and Tony tells him, look, I'm not here to fight. I thought we might be able to help each other. We both got a serious problem coming our way. So a short while later, Tony brings Flash into his lab, and as Tony opens up one of the doors to the testing room, Flash sees Extremis. Tony tells him that this might be more of his expertise, but they're calling it an Extrembiate, a symbiote fused with Extremis tech. You can control it like any other armor. But Flash yells, it's a living thing! There's no controlling it! Not long term! Tony tells him that he brought him in for something else, actually. Since Null's invasion, he's been scouring video from all over the world for potential symbiote activity. And that's how he found Flash. But not all of his goopy cousins have been unloading food at homeless shelters. Last week, a boat was found drifting in the Indian Ocean with the remains of 4 Somali pirates sloshing around on the deck. No bullet holes, no signs of bladed weapons, just viscera. The next day, a Somali warlord and his militia were found the same way. I have reliable intel that a rep with the American Arms Division of Alchemex was here. Today, that man stepped off a plane in the JFK International Airport about 10 minutes before the remains of 2 flight attendants and a passenger were found. Flash tells him, it's Carnage. He's here. Tony tells him, no, Cletus is dead. Flash tells him, that's not how it works. Dead or not, his consciousness is still on the hive. When a host and a symbiote bond, the host can leave an imprint behind. There's never been a stronger symbiotic bond than Carnage and Cletus. I could feel it now. I saw Carnage driving down the interstate with the top down and a corpse in the back. He spoke to me. I'm not sure if it's the connection that he shared with Null, but he's stronger than he used to be. The way that he was talking, it sounded like he had something big planned. Tony says that he might have an idea. Since Null's invasion, every man, woman, and child on Earth now knows about symbiotes, and because of that, they're scared to death. We can't afford another high-profile symbiote attack right now. A lot of people want every non-human living on Earth rounded up, friendly or otherwise. And nobody's banging that drum louder than Senator Peter Crane of New York. Crane is staking his career on the anti-alien movement. He's the new face of the Friends of Humanity, who no one's taken seriously in 10 years. He has strong ties to Alchemex. Pretty sure Crane's in danger. We need someone who already understands and can find big symbiote threats before they make the news. You said that there's a pull towards Carnage. Follow that. See where it leads, Flash. If you're right, it has something to do with Peter Crane and we need to warn him. Shadow him. If anything happens to him, he'll be a martyr. The Friends of Humanity will be the new normal. The next day, Peter Crane holds up at another rally, but in the crowd, Flash is scanning the area looking for anything. He says that he can feel Carnage there. He wanted him to be close by. But then Flash begins to hear Carnage's voice, telling him that they're all wondering when he'd show up. I've got all your brothers and sisters waiting with me. Everyone turns to look at Flash and Carnage goes on. Damn near every symbiote Venom has ever spawned is right here around you. But you're not here to join them, are you? As the guns are drawn, Flash changes costumes and begins running, stating that Crane is not in danger. Crane is Carnage! So later that night, Flash waits in an alleyway when Hank passes by. He calls out to him asking if he was serious about the security job, because there's a thing. It could be really dangerous. Hank tells him that no matter what it is, he's in. Flash tells him, good, it'll be a government job. Senator Peter Crane's hiring. Elsewhere, Peter Crane is sitting with a news anchor, and the anchor asks what does he say about the claims that his anti-alien message is merely an attempt to capitalize on people's fears to launch a future presidential bid. Crane says that he'd say that it isn't about him, it's about them, all of humankind. My critics like to pretend that the Friends of Humanity are old news, but the name has taken on a new relevance now. The For Humanity rally will prove that. And when we come together next month, when people see how many of us there are and what we can do, I think the world's going to be in for a big surprise. Alchemex is a dangerous place, an evil place. Man-made monstrosities are created there, the worst that there has ever been. And tonight, one of those things broke free. Spider-Man's doppelganger clone jumps out of the Alchemex building, and the guardsmen quickly pursue it. Doppelganger fights back with what he can, managing to snap the neck of one of the guards, but it isn't them that he should be worried about. Wearing the Scream symbiote, Andy shouts, asking, "Where are you going? We've been looking for someone that you know. You wouldn't happen to know where we can find Demogoblin, would you?" Scream tells Andy to stop teasing the doppelganger. She'll just aggravate it more. Doppelganger lunges up to where Andy is swiping, clawing at her, so Andy opens up her mouth, chomping down on the creature's neck. The living guardsman on the ground reports back that they have encountered a symbiote, lock onto the suit's location and bring it back up. Scream tells Andy that the guardsmen are hunting her, and Andy says, bad for them. But what if there's another way around? After securing Doppelganger, she stands before the guardsman asking, "Why are you hunting our kind?" The guardsman yells that he doesn't know anything. They have orders to keep an eye out for any non-human activity. That's all they're getting out of him. Andy leans in asking, "Is that so? There's more than one way to skin a cat." As hair begins to creep onto the guardsman's armor, it begins to poke and prod, ripping apart the armor, when suddenly Scream makes her stop. Scream asks, "Did you hear that?" Andy tells her, "No, but I can feel it. It's making me dizzy. Where is it coming from?" Scream takes control again. "Can you hear that? Calling us!" A Scream breaks the window to the electric store. Andy asks, "What? Senator Kane's calling you? Never thought politics would get to symbiotes." Scream tells her, "No, something other. I can hear it. Can't stop ourselves. Must follow family." The thumping sound grows louder and louder, and Andy says that her skull is pounding. "Why can't I think straight? We need to get ourselves together and..." But before she could finish, a speeding car hits them, sending Scream bouncing across the road. Andy says that this isn't like them. She isn't in control, and Scream is telling her, "We must go! Must go! Must go!" Andy tells her to stop. She's supposed to be family. Scream starts to separate herself from Andy. "Can't stop hearing it! The call! Must go! Must find it! Need it!" Andy takes control, pulling a sewer lid off, jumping and stating that what they need is a timeout. At least down here we'll be safe from ourselves. And Scream hisses, shouting, "You can't do this! Don't make us do this!" And as they fall into the water, Andy asks, "Do what? You're separating from me. Fight whatever it is. Resist it. You're stronger than whatever that is." Scream? As Andy looks at her hands, she can see that Scream has completely separated from her and asks, "Where did you go? Why are you so quiet? Wait, this isn't a sewer. Where are we?" Through the darkness, Carnage appears. That's right. She's right where I want her to be. In your head, with all those squiggling little thoughts. Andy realizes what's going on. No, Carnage, how did you? It's kind of a funny story. What happens to a kingdom when you depose the king? Null used to rule this place, and now Brock thinks he's the king in black. But I was here first. I made this my home while I was waiting for the storm to blow over. See, Brock thought he put me down like a dog. But deep down, we all know the truth. Say it with me, Andy. Carnage never dies. Andy calls out to Scream, begging for her to come back, but Carnage cages her, telling her, you need to save your breath. Scream can't hear you anymore. Now be a good girl and sit in the corner while I have a chat with my little sis. Poor little sis, you and your symbiotic siblings were forced into this existence. This life was never your calling. Don't worry, Big Brother is planning a family reunion, and you're my first guest. All I need for you to do is scream. With Carnage in control of Andy and Scream, he asks, how about it? How about we go have ourselves a little fun? As more guardsmen arrive, they immediately open fire, and Carnage jumps up, stabbing one in the head with his tendril, slamming him into the ground. The second opens fire, and he turns back asking, do you want to dance too? There's plenty of me to go around. And while several strands of his hair and tendrils begin to rip the man apart, inside Andy's mind, she is yelling to Scream, please, stop! You're killing people! Scream tells her no. And Andy asks, what does she mean, no? This isn't you. You're acting like an addict. Scream tells her that she can feel his call, his pull, undeniable. Their family is reaching out for them, for her. She begins to crush Andy in her mind, and Andy says that she didn't want to hurt them, but her eyes glow red, and she summons the Hellfire brand upon her chest, burning Carnage and Scream from the outside. She yells, I don't want to hurt you, but you're leaving me no choice. And after a few moments, she gasps for air in the real world, panting, asking, how could she do this? Carnage asks, do you see how quickly your host turns on you? You were never going to work out. Now, hurt her before she can hurt us. Scream begins to peel herself off and suffocate Andy. And Andy makes her brand burn hotter, brighter. She begins to rip both Carnage and Scream off of her. And as that smoke is fading, she asks, where is she? Oh God, please no, what did I do? I can't hear you anymore, Scream. At that moment, she is grabbed from behind and a guardsman tells her to surrender the remnants of the extraterrestrial and come with them. She turns back, blasting the guardsman, telling her, you will not touch me! Leave me alone! And as she gets ready for another attack, she lets the fire fade and asks them, just leave me alone. Scream, I'm sorry. Weeks ago, the hunter fired. His dog moved quickly, making sure that the deer was down as he sank his jaws into its neck. They dragged the dead animal back to the truck and drove home. That night, the hunter sits in front of the television with a beer. He reaches down, patting the dog on the neck. Good boy, Mitch. Good dog. And the TV interrupts his game with a smiling face, the one of Senator Crane popping on it. Crane says his usual banter about protecting themselves from the symbiotes and the aliens. Support the friends of humanity, he ends his message. But his eyes are evil, and his smile wicked. Suddenly, the dog sits up, his eyes wide as the call thrums through his mind. He begins to growl as he stalks across the room. His jaws widen as saliva drips from his teeth. The call continues to be positive, and is all that he can hear. He jumps at the hunter, and the man screams in pain as he tries to call off the animal, but the dog ignores him. Your voice was all I could hear, Phage calls through his mind as he continues to bite into his former master. The dog morphs as the symbiote takes more control, and the hunter screams out. Crane smiles on the screen as blood splashes against the glass. Carnage is in Phage's mind now. You want it simple? I'm the Alpha, the apex of the Codex, and I'm just doing what I'm good at, like you, so follow my lead. After all, what's simpler than a little carnage? He says with a laugh as he takes over Phage. Meanwhile, in New York, Andy continues to fight off the guardsmen, blasting them with her hellfire. She was in our last issue, the original wielder of the Scream symbiote. Stand down, Dented. We know you're harboring an alien fugitive. No! No way in hell! She shouts as she launches another blast, but the guardsmen attack with their lasers, throwing her to the side. Alchemex owns the rights to all non-human matter. The ashes on your skin, whatever's left in your blood, it's coming with us! They tell her, and she struggles to get back to her feet as another guardsman comes up from behind her, hitting her with his gauntlet taser. We're not paid to debate! She awakens later, trapped in a cell as Dr. Steven sits outside of her glass cell. He apologizes for the rough treatment, explaining that if it was not for him, the guardsmen would still be using lethal force. Where's Scream? She demands, wanting to know where her symbiote other is. Hellfire burning on her chest and demons at her shoulders. But Dr. Steven sighs. I'm on your side, Miss Denton. Please, cool your flames. The demons disappear and she begins to calm down as Stevens explains to her that Scream is mostly gone, but they found traces of her on her person and in her blood. I'm trying to save you. I thought you would like to know what I've seen these relationships do to people. Meanwhile, Flash Thompson, also known as Agent Venom, is walking through Manhattan when a woman screams. The man who stole her phone begins to run past Flash. Welcome back to New York, Flash, he sighs to himself, his anti-venom suit lashing out, tripping the thief and allowing Flash to catch the phone. He looks at it, which is streaming a newscast of Senator Crane. Today's alien violence was a tragedy. Luckily, I'm told the poor girl is safe with my partners at Alchemex. The senator sighs, and Flash's eyes widen as he recognizes the face of his former sidekick, Andy Denton. Meanwhile, over at Alchemex, the hunter steps out of his car, flanked by his dog. He introduces himself as Buck Cashman, a member of Senator Crane's private detail. The senator has taken a special interest in Andy Denton's case, and as of now, her treatment is under my oversight. Step aside, he tells the guardsmen posted outside, pushing past them, his dog moving at his side. Inside, the people are shocked as Cashman attacks a man, dragging him down the corridor. How did we get here, Scream? And her eyes widen as Cashman steps in front of the glass door to her cell. You should know, traitor. He snaps as the symbiotic tendrils begin to curve around his arm. Traitor? I've never met you. What is this? Andy questions as she beats her fist against the glass. But the Carnage phage creature begins to form over Cashman as he tells her, we want payback! Fine, you want me? I'm right here, but I promise it won't be easy. Andy tells him as the hellfire begins to form around her. Alarms begin to sound as the system detects the symbiote's presence. Tell us, what was it like to scream? Did you think Phage would let that betrayal stand? He asks as he rears up at her. Your attack stopped Scream from answering my call. Time to pay, but we don't burn, we consume! The alarms continue to sound in Dr. Stevens' office when suddenly the window shatters and Agent Anti-Venom lands on the floor. Dr. Stevens, where's Andy? He demands, and Stevens is shocked. Flash? Flash Thompson? You're alive? He stutters with Flash nodding as the symbiote pulls away to reveal his face. In a hurry, Doctor. Those alarms aren't for me. I know Andy Benton is here and I know you wouldn't hurt her, but I can't say the same for Alchemex. Where is she? He demands, but Stevens nods quickly. If you want to find her, Flash, follow the screams. Phage, meanwhile, is breaking through the glass, roaring as he launches himself at Andy Benton. But she lashes out with her hellfire, blasting him in the face. You think I'd let her be used by you? I have to disagree. Cashman looks up, the symbiote quickly reforming around him. Scream! We'll rise from the ashes! He declares, but Andy lashes out again, punching him in the face with her hellfire blast. But Phage whirls around, grabbing her by the head, the symbiote beginning to curl, covering her face and suffocating her. We all know your story. Born in the back of a car, abandoned by your mother, alone and unwanted. Why would your death be any different? Arr! He snarls at her. But Flash suddenly skids into the room because she's not alone. This is over, Phage, he snaps, Phage turning to look at Agent Anti-Venom, tossing Andy across the room. Stand down unless you want you and your shade of a symbiote to join the traitor. Flash gets ready for the fight, preparing himself. Or I can hand you a beating to take back to your boss. Null has already hurt us enough. I'm not letting Carnage pour salt on that wound. Phage suddenly rushes past him, Thompson's eyes going wide as he watches Phage stab Andy through the chest. Carnage seeks blood for our hive, and today, we will be well fed. Before the life faded out of her eyes, Andy used what strength she had to release a fiery explosion that frees herself from the spike in her chest. Flash tries to do what he can, but as the guardsmen arrive, Phage doesn't even bother with him and begins to kill all of the innocents around them. Elsewhere, at a random retirement home in the middle of nowhere, USA, an old man is watching the news as a green liquid begins to coat his body. The news plays Crane's call to arms speech, and Lasher begins to hear pounding in his head, coming to life and escaping the retirement home with his half-alive old man host. But back at the lab, Phage continues tearing through, ripping apart the guardsmen, while Flash hurries over to try and save Andy. He rushes her to Dr. Stevens' lab, shouting that they need to do something for her. Without Scream, Andy's going to die! Dr. Stevens says that there were remnants of Scream in her, but Scream is damaged beyond repair. However, there was enough of the original structure intact to splice together with another symbiote. Yours, Flash Thompson. Andy sees the test tube with Scream in it, and she tells her that she is coming. And with what strength she had left, she managed to break free. The mixture of red cells from Scream and white cells from Anti-Venom's costume break free, covering Andy as a voice rings in her head, telling her to listen closely. The absence of Scream, the negative space of noise. We are now the sound of silence. As Andy rises, Flash asks if she's okay, but the symbiote tells him, "Shh, no more screams, no more pain. Do you hear it? All is quiet, all is silence." Over in Staten Island, a young Bren flips through the channels when he sees a report of an attack on the Alchemex building, the same one that his father works at. Toxin tells him to go. They need to get to his father. He needs Toxin. But back in the lab, Phage continues his rampage when he hears a voice calling to him, a more calmer voice. Silence steps out telling him, "The first rule is, speak only when spoken to." She grabs him, throwing him into the wall, but before he can even get up, she touches his face, the anti-venom serum beginning to spread around him, driving Phage mad to a point where he jumps out the window. His host's body slams into the ground and watches the symbiote come off of it as a dog is watching. Silence stands at the broken window watching this all go down, and Flash walks up asking, "Andy, is that you?" Silence turns and stares. Flash calls out to her again, but she puts up her finger telling him, "Silence, now." Flash tells her that he knows, but he needs to talk to Andy right now. He needs to know that she is still in there. Silence allows it. And Andy asks him if this is better. She hugs Flash as he asks her how is it, and she tells him that she feels fantastic with silence. Flash says that he would love to stay and talk more, but the Alchemex security is going to be here any minute and they need to leave. After getting some distance from the entire scene and freeing Andy, getting her to join him, Flash begins to go over what his plan is for what to do next with Senator Crane. He has a friend named Hank who has been keeping an eye on things as Crane's personal security, but they need to deliver a blow to Carnage and the entire Hive. They need to separate Carnage from all of this. Andy managed to sever the connection that Phage had with the Hive, so maybe they can take the fight directly to Carnage. But while trying to figure out how they're going to take an entire symbiote battle to a symbiote-controlled senator, a few states over, Riot is quietly riding a bus when Carnage kills everyone, stating, "Man, I love old buses. Been ages since I've been on one. Anyway, there's a little family reunion going on. Got gifts for all the kids and everything." While Carnage pushes his influence onto another Life Foundation symbiote, Flash reassures Andy that she can do this. She is much stronger than she thinks that she is. After taking a deep breath, Andy connects herself to the Hive, but finds nothing there. She reaches out again, but she can't find a connection to anyone. Not Venom, not the other Life Foundation symbiotes. It's like their connections have all been fractured or corrupted. She is essentially floating in the Hive alone, in silence. But the harder that Andy tries, the more she puts strain on her body, and Flash tells her that they can try again later. He can't save her if she's hurting herself. So they leave the coffee shop with Andy looking against seeing something white, red, and blue. She follows the strands by pulling on it, and suddenly Toxin appears, telling her, "Hey, you called?" But Toxin's arrival did not come without some work. You see, while Bren wanted to make sure that his father was okay, Toxin felt himself trapped in the void. Carnage was attempting to push his influence to capture Toxin, being one of the few good symbiotes still out there. And when Toxin resisted, Carnage was determined to take him by force. Toxin fought back best that he could, but Carnage cut off his connection to Bren and was determined to bring him into the fold. When Carnage was close to taking over Toxin, Toxin ended up consuming Carnage in the void, pushing him out when Carnage threatened to kill Bren. But even though he was alone, Toxin could hear someone calling to him, someone that wasn't Carnage. And though Bren's father was hurt during the Alchemex attack, he was going to survive. Once the connection to Bren, his host, was reestablished, Bren asked Toxin where he was. And Toxin says that he wasn't the only one dealing with dad issues. But there are people out there trying to do something about it and make these problems go away, and if my hunch is right, payback is on its way. Later, with Flash and Andy waiting, Flash asks if she's sure that she wasn't alone. And she tells him that they know even less about all of this than anything else involving symbiotes. This is just a weird situation going on. But she sensed that something different was out there. She knows that it wasn't Carnage, but his stench was still in the air. Toxin appeared in front of her.
Yeah, sorry about that. Haven't cleaned up the place, but this void is under new management. Don't worry about Carnage, he's been handled.
And when Andy asks how, he tells her,
the usual. Carnage cut off my head, so I ate him with my neck stump. All you need to know now is that Carnage owes his host some blood, and they're hot to collect.
Flash says that it looks like they've all got the same idea, head due south, dead set for something worse than the devil, a senator. And as they all fly into the air, Toxin yells,
okay, Carnage, here we come.
Later in Washington, D.C., Flash, Andy, and Bren all walk through the National Mall when Flash mentions that they should meet up with Hank, his man on the inside who's going to have intel on what Senator Crane is planning. But what the three don't realize is the woman that just passed them is running down the walkway, or rather, what they don't realize is who that woman is. Her name is Gemma Shin, and she is Crane's Deputy Communications Director. She also happens to be the host for the Agony symbiote, but her treatment within the campaign center has been less than ideal, and she formed a friendship with Arthur Crane, Peter Crane's son. While Gemma and Arthur are getting to know each other, Flash meets up with Hank to see what Crane's plans are for the public event. Hank says that he's been tailing Crane hard, and Crane has no idea that he's actually been spying on him. It's amazing what people will say in front of people that they consider unimportant. However, this weekend, the president is dedicating a memorial to people killed in the symbiote invasion. Crane is planning to hold his Friends of Humanity event on the same day, at the same time, in a co-opt moment. Andy says that Crane is an opportunistic snake, and it's no wonder why he's Carnage's type. But Hank doesn't think that they would assassinate the president in broad daylight. Right? Hank realizes what they're talking about. Wait, hold on. Carnage is Senator Crane, but Crane hates symbiotes. Wait, is Flash a symbiote too? Because right now, between the assassination revelation and the Crane is Carnage situation, I don't feel particularly safe around any symbiotes. Flash tells him, alright, I'm sorry, but we've got other things we need to focus on right now, like seeing if we can connect with Carnage. Andy begins to connect to the void again, and being close to the source of it all, she begins to see something that isn't Carnage. It's the other Life Foundation symbiotes, and he knows that they're coming. But with not much time left, everyone gets into position, and while the president and Senator Crane begin their speeches, silence doesn't sense anyone. If Carnage's goal was to kill the president, now would be unless the president isn't the president at all. Flash realizes what is going on and yells over the phone, "We made a mistake! Crane isn't Carnage's host! Crane is the target!" Meanwhile, as Hank goes to answer his phone, a giant spike shoots through his chest, and Arthur, wearing Carnage, answers,
Sorry to cut you off, but he is on a tight schedule. We have a speech to catch.
As Arthur leaves, Riot begins to pick up the phone, telling him,
Sorry about that. Your war buddy can't come to the phone right now, Flash. We just spilled his guts all over the floor.
With Riot's back turned, Hank rises to his feet, and with a bloody slash, Riot's head bounces off of the floor, rolling away. Sleeper, another symbiote, then picks up the phone.
Riot is down.
Flash asks, does Hank know that he had a symbiote in him the whole time?
Negative. Host is unaware. You can count on us.
Over in the stadium, Crane takes to the podium, and he begins his speech welcoming everyone, but as he begins to feel something, and he looks down to see blood on his hands, with Carnage telling him,
Nothing personal. I'm a big fan. We just don't need someone lacking imagination.
Carnage then tears through Crane's body, letting the pieces fall to the ground, and the crowd begins to scream. While the Life Foundation symbiotes charge in, Carnage steps in front of the camera.
Crane was right! We are coming for you! So come on, heroes. This is your big chance.
As Carnage and the others carve and slice their way through dozens of people, Sleeper slashes into Phage, telling the people behind him to run. Flash and the others begin to move in, attacking Agony and Lasher, and while Silence and Toxin focus on them, Flash makes his way to Carnage directly. Flash shouts, asking, "Why take Arthur and not Crane himself?"
The old man was the idea. Been making my way to him for weeks. Arthur was just the last link to get to Daddy, and well, turns out Arthur isn't the good boy everyone thought he was. His whole life, he played everyone he ever met. America's sweetheart, Arthur Crane, was an awful lot like Cletus Cassidy.
But just then, Carnage is blasted from behind by Iron Man wearing a new prototype. As Carnage is ripped away from Arthur, Arthur yells, "No! Don't take it away! Give it back!" But as Iron Man stands there proudly telling Arthur that he's finished, Carnage wraps himself around Iron Man.
Did you think you could wear one of us like one of your tin suits?
Carnage then forcibly peels the extrembiote armor off, telling him,
I'm the alpha here, boy. It's my voice that they all hear.
After absorbing the armor, Carnage gets ready to kill Tony Stark when Flash Thompson blasts him from behind, stunning him, and pulls Tony out of the way. Tony yells, "You can't let Carnage take the suit! It's extremis!" But then Carnage bonds with it, telling the whole world has seen what their hive can do, and they're going to eat at each other in fear. Carnage has accomplished his goal. The world is terrified of symbiotes again. He then grabs Agony and flies off, shouting,
The next time that we meet, it's going to be a different world, Flash.
As for the other 3 Life Foundation symbiotes, Toxin and Sleeper corner them just long enough for the whole Guardsman squad to show up. Lasher shouts that they're being left behind, and Toxin asks,
What did you expect when you signed up with the Psycho Killer?
While the symbiotes are being captured, the Guardsmen question Arthur, and he asks, "Are they gone? You don't believe those things it said, do you? The alien was lying. It wasn't me. You gotta help me." But later that night, Flash sends Hank back home, and Brent asks, "Don't you think it's a little messed up that he's got a symbiote living in him and he doesn't know?" Flash tells him that he'll tell him when the time is right. But they've got other things to worry about. Dr. Steven came through today, but how long until this happens again? Carnage and Agony are still in the wind. And as the news reports come out, it's just as Carnage said. The world is scared now. The Friends of Humanity's numbers are surging, and the governor of New York appointed Arthur Crane to fill his dad's seat. Peter Crane became a martyr, and Arthur is the new poster child for the anti-alien movement. But for Arthur, well, Arthur is lost. He asks Gemma that Carnage is going to come back to him, right? He can't hear Carnage anymore. Gemma tells him that she doesn't know what Carnage will do, but he believes that he can still be useful. Is that true, Arthur? Can you still be useful to us? Arthur screams out, "Yes, I can be useful. I'll do anything." And there you have it, the return of Carnage, but with new powers, new followers, new lackeys, and a new body. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of Extreme Carnage, a weird book that came out to bring Carnage back into the Marvel continuity thanks to the Let There Be Carnage movie. And honestly, I really loved this. It's kind of what I want from a symbiote comic book. Just the symbiotes going to town against each other with Flash Thompson and Andy Benton in the mix. I love the fact that they brought back Andy Benton. She was my favorite weird sidekick that they gave Flash Thompson towards the end of his run. I'm just so happy as a Flash Thompson fan that he's back, and we have Andy Benton, and we got other characters like Sleeper and Toxin. They're all in the mix now. I'm excited for this, and I hope you are as well, and I hope to see you next time right here at the Comicstorian channel. We do 2 to 5 comic book themed videos on a weekly basis and would love for you to join us. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.